All right, guys, what's up? This is a new series that I'm going to be doing that I'm calling the Not So Mysterious Mystery School. And the intention behind this is I think that we're very close to what you could call the end times, what you could call the ascension, what you could call revelations, the rapture, whatever lens that you want to put on it. I think that we are nearing the end of a great cycle. And it's really important at this time that information that was once hidden become public. And so that's where I urge, everybody else too, if you've ever been privy, part of a group or, a secret society or whatever, it's not the time to keep secrets anymore. It's not the time to keep information from the masses. This is the time to make that stuff public. So the intention of the Not So Mysterious Mystery School is to bring a more grounded sense to these concepts that were previously kind of locked up in mystery schools when it came to enlightenment, ascension, all that kind of stuff. So I want to be able to just talk about it, to break it down, to have discussions, maybe do live streams in the future about this kind of stuff. But I wanted to start this video by talking about the concept of escaping the matrix, because that's a very, kind of trigger phrase that we see a lot of people talking about, this idea of either escaping the matrix, transcending the matrix, or of, people wanting to go home to wherever home is for them, if home is beyond earth. This feeling of longing for something else and of having a sense of impatience, really, of wanting something to come, kind of on a timer, like, when is this event going to happen? Because I'm ready to be done with Earth School. And I really want to dive into this because I think that this is not the right way to approach what we're going through right now. I think the idea of escaping the matrix or of wanting to go home is defeating the point of why you came here in the first place. And so the first concept I really want to lay out here is I don't believe that we are meant to escape the matrix. I believe that we are meant to love the matrix. You could even say become the matrix. Transcend the matrix might also be, kind of a good way to look at it if transcending for you is to become one with. Not if transcending is escape, right? So that's where we get into semantics here, but I really want to dive into the heart of what this means because I think a lot of people are stuck in this place of escapism, of just wanting to get out of this place. And I think that can be a risky way to approach what's going on here on Earth. So why do we not want to escape the matrix? Well, in my opinion, and I want to preface all of this with, this is all my perspective. So please take what resonates with you and leave what doesn't resonate with you. I'm not saying this as absolute fact or truth. I'm just trying to give my perspective on something that I hope can resonate with you in certain ways. And again, if it doesn't, then leave the things that don't resonate, at the door, and, don't take those things to heart if they don't sit with you. So what I think we're really here to do is to not become indifferent or to escape the reality that is before us, but to really come to a place where we become in love with it. And through that love, we become one with the reality. See, I don't think that we're in a matrix that is some kind of simulation that we're meant to jump out of or escape from. I don't think this is some kind of prison planet that people have been sent to that we're just waiting to go home. We're waiting to, have our prison sentence be up so we can get back to wherever we came from. I think that's all kind of an immature way of looking at it, because the reason I believe that we all came here is to, one, participate in the process of what's going on here, two, to bring any special gifts that you might have to this place, and to three, learn and refine your soul's lessons that you came here to really flush out and, balance. So I think, especially when it comes to the concept of like star seeds and things of that nature, a lot of people can fall into kind of an imbalanced way of looking at it, where they think they're here just for a mission. They're not here to learn anything themselves. Or in the extreme of the other side, they think that they're here as a prison planet, like as some kind of extreme karma that, is intended to make them suffer. And I think that there's a balance between these concepts. And I think it's a mixture. So we're here to bring our talents, all of us, but we're also here to learn, right? And ultimately, I think the learning is probably more of the core of on average, what we're here to do is to be able to take the lessons that are before us, take all of the things in our reality, and become a more balanced being in all of our chakras, right? So from the root chakra all the way up to the crown chakra, to find balance. And so balancing, I think, is really what we're here to do. And so what does that look like? Well, if you get triggered, which pretty much everybody does, if you feel an emotional trigger to something, that is a sign that that's something you're here to work on. So if you get angry, if you get frustrated, if you get jealous, if, name your negative emotion that is not one of love. If your reaction to anything in this reality is not one of pure love in response to that thing, that's something for you to work on. And I think all of us can find something within our lives where that's the case, right? Otherwise, I think we wouldn't be here. And that kind of brings up the idea of, being awake or not awake. I think people can get stuck on their awakening journey by going, oh, I woke up at this date in time, and that's when I woke up, and it's just a switch, right? It's just a switch that went off to on, unawake to awake. And I think that's kind of a trap we can fall into, because to me, the awakening process is a ever-going thing. It's something that goes beyond this life, beyond the 3D, third density reality, if you will. As we ascend, I believe, into the higher consciousness realms over our evolutionary stages, I believe that we are ultimately on a journey of returning to God, returning to oneness with God consciousness. And so I don't really believe that there's ever any stage where we are definitively awake and where we no longer are supposed to do the work. And I see people get trapped in this state of, oh, I'm already awake, I'm already spiritual, I don't have anything more to do in that, context. So I think it's important to understand this is an ongoing process. And I believe that if we were truly awakened on the deepest levels, that would be the point at which we would rainbow light body or become instantly enlightened, like so many of the Eastern philosophies talk about. So how can we actually work on this? Well, that's how we interact with the various triggers in our environment, right? So I think this is really important. And I was having a discussion with a close friend last night about kind of what the purpose of the triggers are in our reality. And it was their impression that it was to become indifferent to the triggers, to become neutral to them, and to become neutral to all of the reality. And I was telling them, no, I think it's actually to respond, to get to a place where we respond totally in a place of love and compassion, much like Jesus did, right? So, there's probably a lot of things around Jesus that were mistranslated or that were misunderstood and have been changed over the many thousands of years, right? Since that being walked the earth. But I believe in my heart that Jesus was on a path of finding pure love in all of his interactions. So yes, maybe Jesus got mad, maybe Jesus, had these negative reactions, but they were all along his healing journey, to the point where at the end of his healing journey, as he was being nailed to the cross, he was in complete forgiveness of those doing that crime to him, saying, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do, which is ultimately symbolic of his forgiveness, right? So I think forgiveness is a key component of this that can help us along this journey, is forgiveness of others and forgiveness of self at the most universal degree. So if you're holding on to some kind of negative emotion or grudge or, this feeling of needing vengeance or revenge against another person or another group of people, that's something to be worked with and meditated on and balanced so that we can then come to a place of being in unconditional love. And I don't think this is something that happens overnight. I don't think it's something that, we just get a sudden epiphany to, and then all of a sudden we can react in love with everything. And, there's also the kind of artificial love that is out there a lot, where people will suppress these negative emotions and think that they're supposed to be in a state of bliss at all times. And I'm not talking about there go the lights. I'm not talking about a state of bliss 24/7, because I don't think that's, exactly what we're getting at here, but a state of responding to things in love. And so how would we actually, work on getting to that point? So let's say a negative emotion comes up. Let's say somebody cuts you off in traffic, right? And that makes you really angry, and you don't know what to do with that anger. Well, a lot of people will tend to just push that anger down, right? They'll just suppress it until the next time something like that happens. And usually by that time, that anger has kind of grown in our subconscious if we've suppressed it and we've not dealt with it, and then it comes out even more. That's where I think a lot of chronic diseases like cancer and things like that come from. So I think that there's two main ways to work with anger. One that is of the light, or what you could call the service to others path, and one that is of the dark, or the service to self path. And so I'm going to be focusing on the light path because that's the one that I'm choosing to walk, although the dark path is also a path that can be walked. And it's kind of like Star Wars with the Jedi and the Sith, where they both use the Force. They're both using the Creator and seeking the Creator in their own ways. But I think most people watching are probably wanting to seek the light path. So I'm going to speak to that more while also giving the context of the dark path so that we can see the dichotomy. So starting with the dark so we can then see what the light does in response, I think the dark seeks to control an anger response. They seek to take that anger and to use it as an energy source to then oppress and spread anger to other beings. I'll kind of keep it at that because I don't want to dive too deep into that since we're not going down the dark path, right? On the light path, the anger is accepted. It is purely loved and accepted. So I think when something like that comes up, the best thing that we can do is to sit on that feeling, that negative emotion, whatever that thing is. And, you can meditate, you can do whatever it is for you that gets you in a contemplative state. Maybe it's going out into nature. For me, I like looking at the sky and nature while I meditate. It just helps my brain a little more. I like to get the signals from nature kind of as a conversation while I'm having these meditative thoughts. And I think it's good to explore the extent of that negative emotion. So instead of running from it, instead of suppressing it and trying to ignore it, instead of trying to drink it away or smoke it away or go on your phone so that you just are distracted, really dive into that emotion. Feel it in its most pure form. Really understand it. Understand, why am I feeling this way? What is this within me? Where does it come from? And why do I identify with this? And when you do that, you begin to understand it more, and then you can accept it. You can go, okay, this is me in this moment. And I love that. I love that this emotion is me in this moment. It is part of my being in this moment, and it will not always be a part of my being. And I love that too. And what you can do is find the antithesis to that emotion. So take that emotion and then find the polar opposite emotion to that. What would be the opposite way that I could react to this situation? The complete 180-degree opposite feeling. And then feel that to its depths, explore that. And I believe when you do this, what you end up doing is neutralizing that emotion and finding the unity in both. So you end up taking what was once negative that you were perhaps dwelling on and maybe spiraling on, and you're able to balance it with the antithesis of that emotion, the opposite, the equal and opposite, which is usually one of love and universal forgiveness, I think, is the kind of simplified antithesis to any negative emotion. But, it could be if you're feeling impatient, then find the patience in that situation, that kind of thing. And that creates the unity within. And I think that is the God within all of us. That is the universal creator. It is the light and the dark is one thing, because the light and the dark are truly just illusions of the one infinite creator that is everything. And so when you find that balance, it ends up neutralizing that negativity that you were once, maybe feeding or trying to suppress or having, some kind of negative reaction to within itself, health or otherwise. And so I think as we practice this, and this is something I'm learning and I'm practicing, I'm by no means, an expert at this, but it's something that as I'm going along my journey and practicing, I'm finding is having a lot of positive effect in my life. And so that's why I wanted to share it. And so as you go further down this path, eventually I think we get to a place, and this is what the Law of One books say as well, the raw material. A lot of this is covered in those books. If you haven't checked them out, highly recommend it. They talk about how eventually we will get to a place where our only reaction to external catalysts, external triggers in our environment, our only reaction becomes one of pure love, like the Christ being. So it's not that we should try to control the emotion. It's not that we should be like, oh no, I gotta feel loving right now, gotta feel loving, because you don't want to control it. That is the dark path. The light path is to accept it, to love it, to find the balance of it, and then eventually you will just not have those reactions anymore. Eventually we will get to a place where we don't have indifference to our reality, but that anything negative that happens to us, including in the most extreme case of Jesus, being nailed to a cross, he was able to show unconditional love in that most extreme of circumstances. And that is, I think, a very extreme example of what this energy is. But that is what that is it becomes the way that we see everything is with love. We feel the love in the consciousness of the reality and in the moment. And any being that comes to us that may try to bring some kind of darkness or attack, we genuinely will only respond in love. And I believe at that moment, that is when we become the ultimately balanced being. And that is when we find enlightenment. And that is when this realm, this third dimensional matrix, if you want to call it that, then becomes no longer necessary, because the whole point of it is to be, in a way, a soul school, is to be this method to flush out the imbalances. And maybe flush out isn't the right way to say it, because it's not that we're getting rid of it, but it's that we are finding the balance in everything, because God is everything, right? God is the one. We are all one. We are all God together. It is the one creator. And so that's where I think, if we can shift our idea from escaping, from wanting to get out of this reality, from wanting to, escape the matrix, and we can find that it's actually supposed to be that we love everything in this reality. We love the matrix. We become it in a way, not in a way that we're participating in the manipulation of it, because that would be the dark path, but in the way that we are literally in our consciousness and our awareness, one with all about us. And so we see others as ourself, and we no longer have any desire to respond in anything but pure love, because that is the way that we want to be treated as well. And that becomes the synthesis of the reality and the way that we experience the reality. So I hope that made sense. Please let me know if you have any questions or anything to add to this concept, because I think it's a really, fascinating, it's a really fascinating journey to go on when you start to kind of consciously understand this more, and when you take every single moment in your reality as a learning experience. It just makes life so much more fruitful and worth living, because instead of things seeming like a punishment or like something that is unfair, you start to see everything as an opportunity to become closer to God. And so now everything in life suddenly has meaning when you start going down this path of understanding. No longer are things meaningless and confusing, but you find that the most intense of situations are there to be the most intense initiations to bring you closer to God. And you may even find yourself calling in, more intense situations just so that you can learn those lessons more quickly and more practically and more efficiently than one of not learning. And another interesting thing that the Law of One books say in this regard regarding aging is that the reason that our lifespans are so short compared to, say, biblical lifespans, which were recorded as being like 900 years, which the Law of One also says that there were beings that lived 900 years, in our distant past. Our lifespans were shortened because we were no longer seeking these balancing principles and these enlightenment principles. So when the creation realizes that a species or an individual is no longer taking advantage of the catalysts in life to grow and learn, the aging process gets sped up, and the lifespan becomes shorter and shorter, because it's basically like the universe going, well, if you're not going to learn the lessons within this life, then we're going to cease this one and you'll start over, and hopefully you'll learn the lessons in the next life because you're not seeing them in this life. So what they say is that the perfectly balanced entity will actually not age physically and will basically learn these lessons until the point where they're no longer necessary and the entity becomes kind of tired with the reality. Not tired in the sense of unloving, but tired in the sense of having learned all the experiences and becoming ready to move on to the next stage of consciousness. And then that's when the entity would willingly then leave the body on their own volition, which is what I think we've seen with like this rainbow light body concept in Eastern cultures and like Buddhism and things like that. So yeah, let me know what you think about this. Add any thoughts that you have down below. And let me know if you like this idea of the Not So Mysterious Mystery School. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.